On today's American Football Stories episode, we'll recap Week 6 NFL action. American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips, similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly tell a straight video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
What time is it? Game time! It's gonna be special. They gonna talk about this forever.
Welcome to American Football Stories.
Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown!
Bringing together the many perspectives that make up college football in the NFL.
Football is one of the greatest sports ever invented.
From players and coaches.
Believe, baby, believe, baby.
Hey, we playing to win right here, fellas.
To the front office and scouts.
The public is finally beginning to catch up, but they don't even know half the truth.
Us against the world, let's get it.
Your hosts, Robert Parker and Nick Knudsen, bring you American Football Stories.
Welcome to the American Football Stories podcast brought to you by Coach Paint. Today is October 19th, 2020. I'm Nick Knudsen. My guest host today is Jeremy Coleman, filling in for Robert Parker, who's in Seattle tonight. He'll be back later in the week for our picks. And Jeremy, we were saying it, not the best Sunday of football today. kind of like a lot of blowouts.
Yeah, there really were.
Yeah, a couple of good finishes though. We'll get to. Well, we'll cover every game here, but just not the most interesting Sunday of NFL football we've seen to date. So bye weeks this week: Las Vegas, New Orleans, LA Chargers, and Seattle. I believe all those were planned and none of those were COVID affected. We kind of semi have a normal week. Kansas City and Buffalo were pushed from a Thursday to a Sunday, but a couple of the games looked a little iffy a few days ago. A couple teams shut down facilities, but maybe they're taking whatever Nick Saban's taking. They figured out a way and they play the game. So we're going to start with Houston and Tennessee. Texans should have had this one, but they're down 21-7 early. They come back. They take a late lead, minute and a half to go up. Minute and a half left. They score. They go up 36-29. Deshaun Watson is playing a good game. He's loosened up. I think he's that Ferrari in the garage you were referring to earlier. The Titans, though, they answer back with a big drive. Vrabel knows he's got Derrick Henry, so he says, let's go to overtime, kicks the extra point to tie things up. Henry immediately makes that decision pay off, and between him and Jeremy McNichols, the Boise State running back who has found some life in Tennessee here, they pick up a combined total of 50 yards on back-to-back plays. Henry punches it in a few plays later. Tough break for the Texans. They really played well enough to win this game today.
Yeah, well, finally, the Houston offense is starting to hum. In a sense, they're letting Watson cook, just like they say they're letting Russell Wilson cook out in Seattle. He's finally, revving it into sixth gear, throwing the ball downfield. Brandon Cooks has had two big games back-to-back here. Will Fuller's had two big games back-to-back. Really, the difference has just been they've opened up that offense. It's looked a million times better since they've done that. I wonder why Bill O'Brien couldn't do that. Anyway, we won't get on that topic. I might be there too long. But really, Tennessee went right back to what they're used to doing, ground and pound running game. And then honestly, Ryan Tannehill has been a revelation for that team dating back to week 5 of last year, whenever they decided Mariota was done, that they were done with that experiment. I was never on the train for that experiment, I'll be honest. But Tannehill has completely revived his career in Tennessee. He just makes plays when they need them to. It's incredible.
So I want to hear your Bill O'Brien spiel because you're our guest, Jeremy. It's time. Okay. This is time to unload. But let me say something real quick. If you're the Texans organization and your first schedule, the schedule gets released and you're playing at Kansas City versus Baltimore, at Pittsburgh versus Minnesota. I know Minnesota's record sucks, but we thought they'd be a pretty good team coming in. Who's got a more brutal 4-game stretch in football than the Texans had coming into this season?
Yeah, pretty dang rough. When you're facing teams with those types of quarterbacks alone,
right.
And I almost don't think it's fair to put Kirk Cousins in that first group, but it is what it is. He had a good day. He had a very good day when Houston came to town 2 weeks ago. My big thing with Bill O'Brien was that none of his moves made sense. So for years, he wanted to control the offense through his playbook, and that did not allow Deshaun Watson to play to his best talents most of the time. Deshaun Watson made great plays because he's a great player, and he had a great player to make those plays with in DeAndre Hopkins. Fast forward to this offseason, the only thing they do is they trade away DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson, who has had a nice year, which is kind of the running back style that Bill O'Brien wanted, a one back that can do it all type of thing. But then they went out and signed Randall Cobb to a big deal, went out and got traded for Brandon Cooks, and then even traded for Kenny Stills, when they did the whole Laramie Tunsil first round pick swap. So they made all these moves to go to a spread offense, but then Bill O'Brien still wants to run the ball all the time. It just didn't make any sense. It's like taking the square peg the square peg and trying to put it in the round hole. It's like the pieces did not add up to do what he wanted to do. So I'm not all too surprised when the first 4 games come along and the offense sputters, especially in the first 2. At least in the Pittsburgh game, they put up 20 points in the first half. But other than that, very uninspiring offense. So it didn't surprise me when he got let go after 4 games. I was telling my buddies I didn't think he'd make it halfway through the year this year.
Well, I mean, it's a absolute brutal schedule, but you have to look at his resume. And maybe this is me just being a loser Jacksonville Jaguars fan with no expectations year in and year out. But the Texans have had a pretty daggone okay run with him, okay? I'm not going to say good.
Yeah.
They don't win a lot of playoff games. They're not winning playoff games left and right under O'Brien. I get it. But if your name is not New England, Pittsburgh, or Indianapolis/Denver with Peyton Manning, you're not winning a lot of AFC playoff games in the last decade, okay? So, Houston never quite – the thing that I will say is maybe there was some Bill O'Brien fatigue. You heard the story about the J.J. Watt incident before he got fired. Maybe some fatigue. It's just time to – he seemed like a tough dude to work with. But I don't want to sit here can you at least give the guy credit for the fact that the Texans were a reliably competitive team year in and year out with Bill O'Brien at the helm? Is that a false statement?
No, it's not a false statement.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't. Do you
but
think he
I
gets
felt
another
like
shot? You think he gets another shot somewhere in the NFL?
He probably will, because just the coaching fraternity in general, coaches get new jobs all the time. I mean, Jason Garrett got a job right away as the offensive coordinator.
I mean head coaching job.
Head coaching job? Maybe. But the one thing I would not be in line with is him doing this dual GM head coach.
No, I think we can all agree the GM thing was a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, that was an absolute disaster.
Right.
And that's just too much on his plate. Unless you're Bill Belichick, where you're so in tune with your system that you know exactly what you need type of stuff, and he's got a GM there too. Don't get me wrong, but let's be honest, Bill Belichick runs the ship. But yeah, it was just a disaster for Houston. Just the conflicting offseason moves with the identity of what they wanted to be as a team. And like you mentioned earlier, I said Watson is the Ferrari that was parked in the garage that would only get up to second gear or something. When you have a young talent like Deshaun Watson, you have to build your offense to his strengths. And I never felt like they started doing that. These last 2 weeks finally looks like they're trying to do that. Romeo Cornell's been like, open up this dang playbook already.
So the common narrative is they're going to bring in a guy that's going to feature Watson a little more, let Watson, take any restrictions off Watson, let the guy play. That's the common narrative. However, the Houston defense has been atrocious, and I think I don't think it would hurt if you brought in a defensive-minded coach into Houston, maybe a defensive-minded coach that lets Watson play.
Yeah.
Someone like a Mike Vrabel. Maybe not Mike Vrabel exactly, but like a Mike Vrabel.
Right.
Might not be a bad hire, but I think a couple years ago, these like Sean McVay wannabe hires, I don't think those things are working out too great. I mean, I know it's going well in Green Bay, but some of these other ones not so good. So like let's see maybe a veteran defensive coach who is not going to put the clamps down on a high octane offense. That would be a good fit in Houston right there, and gotta get to work rebuilding that defense if you're going to compete in the South again.
Yeah.
So let's go to your home state, your hometown. How far outside Indianapolis are you, Jeremy? Sorry.
I mean, I have an Indianapolis address. I technically live in Lawrence, which is like a suburb of Indianapolis. So,
all right. So Colts, I assume you watch a lot of Colts football living in town there. So Indianapolis 31-27 over Cincinnati. Burrow and the Bengals. They open up with 4 straight scores. They had 21-0 lead, 24-7. They left too much time for Phil, though. Indy takes the lead back by the end of the third quarter. Rivers throws for 371, 3 TDs. Burrow, late pick to seal the deal for the Colts. But I'll say this, disappointing for Cincinnati. This is not a season about winning and losing. I mean, I every season is. That's a stupid comment, actually. But I guess what I meant by it is realistically, you can't judge too much on the wins and losses this season for Cincinnati from an external standpoint. What you want to see is flashes out of Joe Burrow, and I think you're getting that week in and week out with this guy.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. I mean, you know, honestly, outside of last week against Baltimore, that's the first time I really saw him struggle this year with like trying to read a defense, get the ball out on time. I mean, Baltimore was really taking it to him. You know, I think they eventually pulled Burrow at one point because it was just pointless to have him out there taking hits and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, there are times you look at and see what he's doing. It's like, yeah, that's going to be really good in a year or two. It's just like, man, that's like a next level throw. You know, that's what we were expecting, you know, for him to do in Cincinnati year one, to have these, oh, wow type of moments. You know, right now he doesn't have the greatest of offensive lines. I think it's solid. I think it'll get better. It's a young offensive line. That's another problem there. You know, they just haven't played a lot of football together. But I mean, T Higgins has come alive for him. You know, AJ Green had a decent game today. Tyler Boyd made his contributions. Joe Mixon ran the ball very well today. The one thing I will give the Bengals offensive line credit for is they were able to open up some holes in the running game against what's been a very stout Indianapolis defense. So kudos to them for getting the running game going. But the biggest thing is I feel they took their foot off the pedal. They were like, oh, we've got this nice comfy lead. Let's see what we can do here to whittle out some time. And it's like, man, guys, that's never the right answer. Because, yeah, the Colts got off to a slow start. But then Phillip Rivers had his best game as a Colt today, coming back from, like you said, down 17 to finish the game off with 3 touchdown passes. I think it was like over 350 yards or something like that. I mean, and honestly, if you would know me, I have not been the biggest Phillip Rivers supporter this year. He has not looked good, really. I felt like today was the first game he's looked really sharp playing for them this year. So, I mean, they come back, you know, as a friend of mine said, you know, they lucked out and escaped with a win, you know, here in Indy. So,
well, this is Phil Rivers style of football. Hey, get me down behind 2 touchdowns and let me just rip it. Let's go.
That's true.
This is like classic Chargers football. Like here, no problem. I think he even said he did this against the Bengals with the Chargers too. So no big deal. No big deal. But let me ask you something. You just hit on one of my things that's been one of my pet peeves early on, because everyone's been going nuts about this Colts defense. And I heard it a lot after that game in Chicago where they just absolutely shut down the Bears. But let's just run through their schedule real quick for this vaunted Colts defense. Are the Jaguars great on offense this year?
No.
Week 1 opponent. Okay, week 2 opponent. Are the Vikings awesome this year on offense?
No.
Are the Jets good at football at all?
I was about to say, I'm looking forward to this next question.
How about the Bears? How about the Bears? Are they a great offense? Would you categorize them? They've maybe found a little footing with Nick Foles, but this was That was that the game that Foles first started. I believe is his first.
I believe it was. Yes.
Yeah. So that not a great offense, though, right? You'd say.
Right.
All right,
No.
Browns decent offense, right? Right?
They're not bad.
They gave up 32. They gave up 32, and then they just gave up 27 to Cincinnati. I hope we start realizing that the Colts numbers are built on crap. And we stop giving this defense so much respect. I love the defensive line. With DeForest Buckner, they got a good line up front. I know they got a lot of good players on that defense, but let's cool it on the everyone's just giving them so much love on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm kind of looking at it going, what are you seeing? Am I seeing the same thing? But
they've definitely played some poor offenses up to this point.
Yeah, but luckily they'll they got the Lions next week, which they should take care of. That would give them a 5-2. Hey, they're looking like they're the only real thing between the Titans and the AFC South crown right now. So we'll see them. They'll get their opportunity to showcase who they are going forward. But I'm calling a little BS on that old defense thing. So anyway, hey, you weren't here in week 3 after week 3, but when the Falcons lost in week 3, I started my Trevor Lawrence to Atlanta theory. So this has been going on for 3 weeks. Because I think even if the Jets get the first pick, I think he's going to pull an Eli Manning or a John Elway. Just say, I don't want to play for the Jets.
Ooh.
Atlanta's finding a way to get this guy. And Arthur Blank is the type of guy who will trade the house for him. But they're going around screwing things up by beating the Vikings today. They need to stop winning. Come on, Atlanta.
Yeah, I actually predicted this today, as crazy as that sounds, because teams that fire their head coaches generally perform very good the following week.
Well, I mean, Ryan, you felt like they played to their potential today. And honestly, we've seen Atlanta look like this a couple times this year. It's just usually they don't finish the game. They usually
that's very fair. They've put up points multiple times this year. But they got lucky they played the Vikings without doubt.
The Vikings, they only played half a game. They forgot to play the first half, so we won't address it here. If Minnesota's not going to show up, neither will we. So Cousins, he goes off in the second half, though, for 3 TDs and 343 yards. Julio, welcome back, Julio Jones. 8 receptions, 127 yards, 2 TDs, but he's upended by the rookie Justin Jefferson on the Vikings. 9 receptions, 166, 2 TDs. Really wasn't much of a game, though. The Falcons led 23-0 early in the third, and they actually closed the damn game out.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those Kirk Cousins stats were garbage time stats. The game was done. He was just trying to keep up. I mean, I think Falcons were up 40-15.
Yeah,
at the point. I mean, yeah.
Ugly performance from Minnesota, but you gotta think the Vikes are a little discouraged coming off that loss to Seattle last week. That was a game they should have had, but
yeah, they should have.
Interesting week for them. All right, Denver at New England. What the Broncos? What they beat the Patriots 18-12? What? This is definitely, it wasn't the most pretty game.
No.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't even entertaining, to be honest.
No, it wasn't. And I think what we're watching is couple teams that have been really affected. There's been some major injuries to key players. Drew Lock comes back. We've seen COVID ravage New England.
Yeah.
The Pats running game was neutralized by Fangio's defense, and the Broncos use a steady effort. They welcome Lock back, and it was really a heavy field goal game.
McManus made 6 field goals. I mean, my God.
Yeah. Not a game we're used to seeing from New England, though, Jeremy. And what I want to know from you is we're not going to spend a lot of time breaking down this ugly game. So what are we getting worried about the Pats missing the playoffs officially? Because the Pats I believe they fell to 2-3 with this loss here. Yes.
They did. And honestly, I mean, call me crazy, but Miami is starting to look a lot better. So that's
Big Dolphins podcast. American Football Stories is a Big Dolphins podcast here.
Okay, all right.
We've been on the Dolphins since the preseason. We like the Dolphins.
Right. So I mean, the Dolphins have looked very good. They've rattled off, I think, 3 wins here in a row. Buffalo is still leading that division. I don't see that changing really at all this year. They had one bad game last week against the Rams where they were without John Brown. just didn't make a lot of plays. Josh Allen didn't play up to the level that he had been playing to. I mean, it's certainly not out of realm to consider the Patriots not making the playoffs. I do think that they will find a way. Because you have to remember there's a 7th playoff team this year. So there's one extra slot to get to the playoffs, but I won't consider them out yet until I see another real, contender. They still are very well coached, and then they can still do some damage.
Yeah, they're staring up right now at the Dolphins, Ravens, Browns, Colts, Raiders, and since the Broncos are 2-3, now the Broncos. So New England is not in a position we're used to. If this were the Jaguars, I'd be like, playoff hunt, baby. Let's go. We're gonna go. I want to disappear. What's the in the hunt column on CBS where they have the in the hunt column?
I think you're right. Yeah.
At least keep me on there through October, and I'm happy if I'm a Jaguars fan. But for the Patriots, we're looking a little shaky on the in the hunt column. They're getting pretty low on that one. So it's really unusual. But hey, unusual times. It would have been a tough enough time this year anyway, moving on from the Brady era. But I think you're seeing a little more than the Brady era being factoring in here, because who knows how many players are actually out for this game for the Pats and how many players are doing unusual things. I think they threw multiple reverse passes this game. So Belichick's clearly whipping out some interesting things. But I think New England, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough bouncing back because they don't really have a schedule. They got the Niners, Bills, Jets, Ravens over the next month. So,
yeah, that's a tough stretch.
Yeah, we saw the Niners play well today, and the Bills are certainly going to be a tough one. But I'll tell you, that Bills game is massive for New England.
Oh my God. It is.
Got to get that one, because if you let the Bills put another game in between you head into November, that's going to be a real tough one. And you're probably playing for the wild card anyway, but you could absolutely kiss the division goodbye if you lose that Buffalo game on November.
Very well
1st.
could. Very well could.
So, wow, I never thought we're living to see this in our lifetime. This is amazing.
Hey, it's 2020, baby.
2020. Jeez. All right. Well, hey, Alabama's still winning. I figured New England. I wasn't assuming 2-3 to start.
Right. No, I don't think anyone will.
Let's go to a couple cellar dwellers here. Let's go to the Giants and watch the Washington football team. I call them cellar dwellers, but what I should call them are technically the second place teams in the NFC East, right? Maybe the Eagles are technically second at 1-4-1, but they're in the hunt. They're in the hunt column for the NFC East and nothing else. They're either going to be NFC East champions or the number 1 draft pick.
Mm-hmm. God.
New York ends up winning this one 20-19. Take Router picks up a Kyle Allen fumble with 3.5 minutes left in the fourth, runs it in from 43 yards out. The Giants, they allow a TD to Washington because they're the Giants, but they do stop a 2-point conversion on Washington, on Washington's final drive. Rivera said they went for 2 because they played to win. Hey, I think this Washington team's been scrappy all year. I give them credit for fighting, even though they're clearly up against it in 100 different ways off the field. You talk about off the field distractions this year. Nobody more than Washington probably, but
yeah,
the Giants get their first win. Might be their only win on the season, but they got it. Yeah. They play Washington again, maybe.
They play Washington again.
That's about it. I mean, it's a tough year for New York, New Jersey football.
Yeah, well, I mean, losing Saquon, I mean, that just killed their chance to really compete in a lot of games, because no one's going to respect the running game there now. I mean, I know Devonta Freeman's had 2 nice weeks heading into this week. I don't think he did much today, obviously. You see the score. But it just overall, I mean, the Giants team just doesn't have much on offense, and it's because of their offensive line. Mm-hmm. It's just struggling to string together a cohesive unit.
Yeah, well, we're going to spend too much time on that one. We'll move forward. Another struggling football team in the Northeast, the Philadelphia Eagles. They fall 30-28 against Baltimore. And if you look at the score, you almost think, hey, that was a good game. It wasn't.
It
It
wasn't.
wasn't. And Jeremy, I've been offering, just so you know, I've been offering Eagles fans encouragement because I've been projecting what's coming up with the NFC East schedules, and I'm looking at the Giants in Washington, going, "Hey guys, you're all right, Philly. Calm down. You could really suck and still make the playoffs here,
Right.
but Dallas, they're sitting at 2-3. You lose Dak for the season. I'm still going to offer. I'm not going to give up on the Eagles just yet, even though they don't deserve any affection from me. But you got the Giants and the Cowboys the next 3 weeks. 2 Giants games and the Cowboys the next 3 weeks. Here's your time to make a move, Philly, and really get control of the division. So you got through this part of the schedule. Giants, Cowboys, take care of business the next 3 weeks. You're feeling okay, but what are you a little concerned if you're Baltimore today? You had a 17-0 lead, and then the Eagles come back with a chance to tie at the end on a 2-point conversion, but Baltimore holds.
Well, I mean, honestly, I was watching this game. It was right by the Steelers game today, so I was watching it fairly intently, and it just seems like Lamar Jackson couldn't get the passing game going today. I don't know what it was. One thing I will give Philadelphia credit for is their defense. Their defense is ferocious rushing the passer. I mean, they can really get after the passer. They've got like 7 to 8 guys who all play, so they're always fresh. They're always rushing. So, I mean, at times their defense looked decent today. And that's why, honestly, Baltimore did not put up many points in the second half. They did most of their damage in the first half. That's what allowed the Eagles to stay in the game. And the Eagles got some cheap scores late to make this look like a game, like you said. It was not a good game overall. So, I mean, I wouldn't be too concerned to find the Ravens. I would say they've got to find a way to get more of a passing game going, because once they face good teams with good offenses, they're going to struggle, I think, potentially.
Yeah, Baltimore improves to 5-1. They got the Steelers next week, and that's really going to set up control of the division. But hey, is this a tough stretch at Indianapolis, at the Patriots versus the Titans, at the Steelers?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a good
stretch for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a good test to see whether they can, string something together for that long. I mean, yeah, they're leading the division right now, but the Steelers are tied with them at being 5-0. So,
yeah. And if you're the Ravens, the good news for you, you finish with the Cowboys, Browns, Jaguars, Giants, Bengals. So sorry, Steelers fans. That's a pretty friendly schedule to finish. So
gotcha. And
just coming up.
Yeah, just FYI, the Steelers are at the Titans next week. They get Baltimore afterwards.
Ooh. Oh, that was a bye week in between. Okay.
Yeah, so it was a bye week until Tennessee screwed it all up with the COVID crap. So they're playing that makeup game of what should have been the Steelers bye week then.
Good catch. Yeah, Baltimore's on a bye next week then, but their next game's against the Steelers. So Baltimore gets the coming into that one. All right. Speaking of the Steelers, 38-7 over the Browns, and this has been a very pro Browns podcast, mostly carried by me. Robert has been pretty anti-Browns until he finally hopped on the bandwagon last week. And I said during our picks episode this week, Jeremy, Cleveland, I'm not asking you to go into Pittsburgh and win. I know that's asking too much of you. However, I'm just asking you to not go and lay a freaking egg like you did at Baltimore to open the season. That's all I'm asking. Just play competitive football and actually look like a team that wants to make the playoffs and looks halfway decent. But they went and laid that Baltimore-sized egg. It was terrible. Baker was pulled to save them late in the game. 220 total yards of offense for the Browns today. I'm going to let you take the floor, but I just had to express my frustration. Cleveland is still 4-2, but this did not look like a playoff football team today.
No, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, to be honest. I think Baker Mayfield really struggles just to sit back there and pass the ball when it's not play action. He looks very good off of play action, but play action only works when the running game is working. This is where Cleveland's going to get in trouble, really, the rest of the year. When their running game is not going, they cannot pass the ball because there's no threat. Baker Mayfield, I don't know what it is. He when the play action game, it looks like he's got a rhythm, but when he just has to do a traditional drop back pass set, it's like he's still trying to figure that out. At Oklahoma, they did all these different things, that got him out on the edges and whatnot. And Cleveland's done that to a degree. But when you ask him just to sit back there and try to dissect the defense, it just doesn't happen. It also doesn't help that they arguably, in my opinion, played the best defense in the NFL. They have the most sacks coming in this week. They're a top 5 defense in turnovers created. Baker ended up throwing, I think, 2 picks today.
Yep. Pick 6, right? Minkah?
Yeah. Pick 6 with Minkah. Yep. Thank you for showing up finally, Minkah. We've been waiting. First few weeks have been pretty quiet with him. We came accustomed, us Steeler fans came accustomed to him making some game-changing plays, and that's really the first time we've seen him do that this year. He's been asked more just to play deep and not allow anything over top this year, and we let him, a little closer to the line of scrimmage, and sure enough, gets a pick 6 when Baker doesn't see him stepping in front of Austin Hooper for that pick 6 to start the game. So definitely wasn't a good start, and then, he threw the other pick, so it just was a cumulative effect. And one thing I missed out on is, the Steelers games usually aren't on local up here, so I always have to go to like Buffalo Wild Wings or somewhere to watch the game. There was some commentary going on between Odell Beckham Jr. and the Browns again, and I swear to God, that's just a time bomb. It's going to go off again. It's going to go off again. I don't know what was said, but he just looked completely disinterested.
On the sideline?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't look like he wanted to even be there. Like he's just tired of this thing where it's like, against good teams, we're not going to play up to our potential type thing.
Well, you say that, but 2 weeks ago, I put them on. I called them out 2 weeks ago, and I said, go to Dallas and show people that you can play a good game. Like I didn't even ask them to win, and they go down. And I know the Cowboys aren't a great team. Okay.
They're terrible on defense.
They're terrible on defense. I know. And the Browns end up running for 300 yards in that game, put up 49 points. So we really got the full extent of how terrible they were on defense that day. But you go down there and it's still the Cowboys. It's a game where people watch and pay attention to. And you delivered. You got it done. And then you follow that up with a win against the Colts, who, say what you want about Rivers, say what you want about the Colts, they're going to probably be in the playoffs. They're probably going to be a playoff team. I think this Cleveland team is showing that they're showing signs of progress from last year for sure. 4 straight wins. Granted, Washington, Cincinnati, Dallas, and Indy, not the strongest 4 wins in a row, but 4 wins in a row. We're talking about the Browns here winning 4 wins in a row. But here's the next month. Here's why I think Cleveland's going to make the playoffs. All right. Because like you said, it's expanded to 7 teams. You got teams like the Patriots that are a little bit down this year, facing a tougher schedule than Cleveland. Cleveland next week, they go to the Bengals. You got to take care of business there.
Yeah.
But then you got the Raiders, which is going to be a really key matchup because I think those are 2 teams that's going to be another team compete for one of those wild card spots.
Yeah.
If you take care of the Raiders, you're in great shape. Because then you got the Texans, the Eagles, the Jaguars before the Titans. So you got some winnable games. And by the way, the last month of the season, you got Baltimore and Pittsburgh again, but you also get both the New York teams back-to-back weeks, the Jets and the Giants. So that's almost a guaranteed 2-2 stretch. You could split the last month. You're going to rack up 2 wins in December there. And if you can really take care of business, if this Cleveland team is nothing more than beating teams they should beat, they should win 10 or 11 games.
Yeah, so you make a great point there. I was even going to say that. There are teams that they definitely have the ability to beat in the AFC. The Jaguars are one of them. The Bengals are one of them. I do think the Texans and Raiders will give them a bigger run for their money. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Eagles beat the Browns, but like you said, they've been pretty much terrible this year, But the one thing the Browns have struggled with so far this year are teams that have good defensive lines, and the Eagles do have a very good defensive line. So that's one game I would say, could be even, that could really be a challenge. And then, like you said, when you get the Giants and the Jets to end your schedule, are you for real? Who set up the Browns for this schedule?
Well, they get the Giants. It's the Ravens, Giants, Jets, Steelers.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. You're right.
So,
Yeah.
so you get the sandwich. The Steelers
Right.
and Ravens sandwich the New York teams there. So
Right. So the two New York teams, you'll probably win both of those. Jacksonville's not looking good. I mean, there's at least 3 wins right there.
Yeah, so that's getting you to 7 minimum. So you find a way to win 3 more games, you're getting to 10, and that's a playoff team with seven teams.
Yeah.
I mean, the unfortunate part is you play in the same division with Pittsburgh and Steelers. It's the opposite of the NFC East, where any other division the Browns might be winning this year. Instead, they're behind like 2 great teams. But I'm looking at the Steelers here. You're going to play Tennessee next week.
Mm-hmm.
How are we feeling about this one? How you think the Titans are looking like the real deal this year? Pittsburgh's kind of a weird team. They look great one week and then they look pretty average another week. So what are we feeling on that one?
Honestly, I feel like I've seen that type of Pittsburgh team the last 5-7 years, to be honest. One week it looks like we play great. The next week we just kind of meander through a game. Honestly, I like the Steelers' chances in that game, though. I will go out and go ahead and say they're going to win that game. And the reason I say that is because the Titans just give up points left and right.
Mm-hmm.
As where at least when the Steelers play defense, they generally shut things down. I will say it sounds like they lost Devin Bush to an ACL today. So it looks like he will be out. But then for my best friend, Wes, who is a Titans fan, we're going to go watch this game next week. Sounds like they lost Taylor Lewan for the season with an ACL too.
Oh,
so
God, so many
both of those are not confirmed. So I'm not going to go out and say those are confirmed, but those are the rumors out there. Usually the rumors get confirmed eventually. So, I mean, those are 2 big losses. Pittsburgh doesn't really have a guy that can do what Devin Bush does. He's a unique talent, and Taylor Lewan's one of the best left tackles in all football. So, I mean, those are 2 big losses for 2 teams that are going to be in the playoffs.
And that's what on an earlier episode of American Football Stories this week, we interviewed head coach Kevin Kelly from Pulaski Academy in Arkansas. And that was really the number one thing he said that's been the impact of COVID on football this year.
Yeah.
Is just the nature of injuries. Just the injuries are way up this year.
Yeah,
and we're seeing that in the NFL.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. It just goes back to not having a true off season, where you've got mini camps, OTAs, rookie mini camp, wasn't a true training camp. It's like they even dialed back training camp, to make it COVID safe and everything. We've seen players get injured left and right this year.
Yeah, tough year. So another factor to think about in that Titans Steelers game. I know they both have better records than Kansas City. Kansas City is still the number 1 team in the AFC to me. Well, I think the Chiefs will end up getting that number 1 seed eventually. However, I think this Steelers-Titans game, it's going to be very critical for the number 2 spot, Jeremy, because I like Buffalo. I love what they're doing, especially on offense. It's a fun team to watch. They're just on a prove-it basis with me a little bit this year, though. A game against Tennessee, I know it was all screwed up with the timing and everything. But we'll get to see really the Bills play the Chiefs tomorrow. That's going to be a massive game. But I'm not buying Buffalo stock just yet as a top team in the AFC. I think they could definitely win the East with the way things are going this year. But I think the Steelers and Titans this game next week, that's going to probably be for the number 2 spot in the AFC and home field advantage up until the championship game.
Yeah, because unfortunately, with the addition of the 7th team, number 2 seed no longer gets a bye.
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean that makes the race for the number 1 seed that much more critical.
Mm-hmm.
For the AFC for both sides. Not that it's one over the other, but yeah. So but like you said, it's still home field advantage through the playoffs to get that number 2 seed. So it is a big deal, and getting that conference win next week between those 2 teams is it's going to be a deciding factor down the road for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to that
matchup.
Heavy on the Steelers talk today, but we got a Steelers connoisseur here, so might as well take advantage of it. So let's move down to Carolina. The Bears, 23-16 over the Panthers. I don't know about you, Jeremy. I didn't have heavy expectations for Matt Rule's first year in Carolina, and I made the declaration after the fourth game. I said I'm going to stop underestimating this Panthers team because every week they show up, they play tough football. Chicago, though, I don't like this Chicago Bears team. They just keep finding ways to get it done, though. They're the most head scratching 5-1 team in football, and now they're tied for the NFC East or the NFC North lead with the Packers.
Right, with that losing today, yeah. It's
shocking.
Definitely a head scratcher. Their defense is what's keeping them in the games, and their offense is doing just enough.
To
make sure they keep pulling out the wins.
Yeah, it's not pretty football, but hey, since when does the Chicago Bears play pretty football? I've never really associated them with pretty football, but 23-16, the Bears get the win. They keep Bridgewater under wraps. They get 2 picks out of Bridgewater today, and one late that really made the difference. All right, we got to make up time here a little bit. Let's go to Detroit and Jacksonville. We can keep this one fresh. As a Jaguars fan, I call it the empathy line. The apathy line. We have reached the apathy line in the season where you barely know the team's on. You watch it, you keep it out of the corner of your eye. You keep an eye on what's going on. But
that's about it.
It's just ugly. It's ugly in Jacksonville right now. Not a lot to say. DeAndre Swift gets 2 TDs on 116 yards. Jags put up some meaningless points in the second half, but really, you got dusted by the Lions at home.
Yeah, it's not looking good at this point. I mean, the Lions are not a good team. They have glimpses of what they could be, but man, it's been a while since they've been a good team, and Jacksonville's just really struggling. The one lone bright spot is James Robinson.
Yeah.
And then they go away from him whenever he starts trying to get cooking. So,
Gardner Minshew mania starting to run on fumes. I'm hearing a lot of Minshew slander in the Jacksonville circles. People are starting to get unhappy with them a little bit, but I'm going to stick on board with that for now. But he is struggling. It hasn't been the best. So, all right, let's go. Let's stay in the state of Florida. Go down to Miami. The Dolphins, they're looking awfully good the last few weeks. They're coming together 24-0 over the Jets. Has there been a more dominant team in the last 2 games of the last 2 weeks of the NFL? I mean, granted, it's the Jets, but how often do you get shut out in the NFL? That's still good stuff, right?
Very often.
Yeah, Fitzmagic throws for 3 TDs, but I was watching a little bit of this game. Myles Gaskin really kind of stood out to me. Have you watched much of Myles Gaskin this year?
Not a ton, but like you said, I watched a good portion of this game today, and he looks like a piece for the future. It doesn't look like he's just the third guy they've tried this year. He's actually running out there with purpose. He's running with burst. He catches the ball. He can play all 3 downs. I mean, he's a piece for the future. I think they've found a guy who can be there long term. I mean, I don't know if he'll ever be a feature back by any means, but I mean, worst case scenario, you found a good change of pace back, a decent number 2 potentially, because he's been doing a lot of good things down there.
Does anybody not like Ryan Fitzpatrick, or is he the most likable player in the league?
I mean, how can you not like him with that beard? I mean, like Santa Claus today, throwing touchdown. You get a touchdown, and you get a touchdown. You get a touchdown. But, I mean, what I love about Ryan Fitzpatrick, Tua got in that game late, and he was trying to rile a crowd up for Tua.
He was just pumping him up, just
right,
arms in the air. Yeah, exactly. He gets it. He gets his role. He knows he's in the final lap of his career here, and you could tell he's enjoying the hell out of himself.
Yeah, well, honestly, I mean, a few years ago we saw. Oh gosh, I can't even remember his name now. That's sad. I was going to make a great. There was a Jeff Garcia comeback or a Vinny Testaverde. That's who it was. He ended up getting signed or something and playing a game when he was 40 years old. I think Fitzpatrick has shown enough that he can be a backup for a long time in this.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's he's been around to 8 teams. Why not make it a 9th if he's not going to stay in Miami?
Oh yeah. If you're Miami, what do you got to do to keep him around for another couple of years?
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, well, and he's going to be a great mentor for Tua. That's the other thing. He's not, ignorant to the fact that he's not the franchise quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He's been the bridge quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the bridge quarterback, and he has been for almost his entire career.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of some guys that it's very strange to see that they're playing football is, I guess I just wrote Joe Flacco off as retired in my head.
Oh, I know,
I've
right?
seen him play again this year. It's just Joe Flacco. I'm like, what year is it? Like, I'm seeing Joe Flacco's name pop up, but it just strange stuff here. Frank Gore leads the Jets with 11 rushes for 46 yards. Another guy that's been playing forever. Hey, New York, invest in LaMichael Pirine a little bit. You won't be disappointed. They obviously they cut Lev Bell. It feels like a matter of time before Adam Gase
gets
can.
cut. Yeah.
But Jeremy, talk about what I want to talk about with the Jets. They got too much going on here to get into for one game, for one episode. We could dedicate an entire episode to the New York Jets. What I want to talk about is what is the deal with Le'Veon Bell, and what do you think? What type of lessons do you think a player needs to do watching his situation? Take out of watching his situation, because this was a guy that basically, did he sit out the entire season in Pittsburgh for a better deal?
An entire year.
And he gets nothing. And first off, for full disclosure, in case you missed the last 15 minutes of this episode, Jeremy's a Steelers freak. So take what you're about to hear with a full grain of salt and a half. But hey, Le'Veon Bell, you wasted a year of your prime to get a better deal, which you did not get. And then you go to the Jets of all places, and then it's just a total bust. It doesn't work out. Hey, the guy could be like, oh, hey, I spent a year and a half in New York to end up with Pat Mahomes in Kansas City. Deal with that. But maybe he's happy at the end of the day. But I don't think he got nearly the value he thought he was going to get by holding out.
No. Well, running backs just don't get those types of deals anymore. The types of deals he was wanting to get. And the other thing in the Lev Bell situation is he made this giant tirade about how he wanted to get paid as a playmaker because he caught a lot of balls. And it's just a fallacy of an argument. You play the position you play. If you can offer something in the pass game, that's great. But you are never going to get this, my value is going to triple because I'm also a good wide receiver. This is not how it works. He's good. He is a good receiver.
Great.
Coming out of the backfield, and he lined up a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, that guy was a force in his prime in Pittsburgh, and I think he's going to be awesome in Kansas City. I'm very excited to see him get back with an offensively able team. But it goes to show you too, at what point do you value that? Hey, I play for one of the best organizations in football in Pittsburgh, and my quarterback is Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, he gets to play with a future Hall of Famer, Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah,
who I'm going to say this with a grain of salt, got another guy, Antonio Brown at the time, who was on pace to be a first ballot Hall of Famer at the time. I don't know anymore. He probably will find a way to sneak himself.
We don't have to get into him. That's a whole.
Yeah, we're not doing that. But the grass is not always greener on the other side of free agency. It's not. We've seen a lot of big time names go seeking a few extra $1 million, where it's like, is that extra few million worth it? Ask Lev Bell, was it worth sitting out a whole year to waste a year and a third with the Jets for all this money when you could have got more money in Pittsburgh? They were willing to pay you more money in Pittsburgh than with the Jets. But that just shows you it's a classic example of your ego getting in the way of a logical decision. He could have played another 5-7 years in Pittsburgh, put up the same type of numbers he was putting up, but instead he chose to chase a few $1 million. I mean, it happens all the time in today's NFL. I mean, and it's happened in Pittsburgh a lot of times where these guys think they're going to go get this amazing deal and they're going to continue the success. I think part of it is you played with a Hall of Fame quarterback. He was finding ways to get you the ball because you're a legit talent. But let's ask Mike Wallace how his career went once he left Pittsburgh.
His career, so many names.
Yeah, I mean I mean we could go on for days here. I mean Antonio Brown threw his temper tantrum, got traded, made some more money, and then never saw a dime of it. Never played it down for the Raiders. ended up playing in like 2 games for New England last year, and now his NFL future's in real doubt. It just goes to show you, I mean, again, coming from a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I understand the grain of salt thing, but Pittsburgh has been the model of consistency for winning for the last 50 years. They've had 3 coaches in the 55 years. They have not had a losing season in over 20 years. I mean, you know, sometimes you just have to realize that you are in a special position, in a special place where everything's working for you. Everything's working for you. Take a few million less to make sure the good times keep rolling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but maybe he's frustrated because he's playing for a franchise that can't beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs. All right, moving on. Moving on. Tampa Bay, Green Bay. Hey, Tom Brady. I think he liked free agency this year. Tom Brady, he throws for 166 yards, and he threw for more than Aaron Rodgers, who had 160. That's not bad. But the Packers early on were really in control of this game, 10-0 early lead, and it just fell off a cliff. You had you had a pick six, and then you had a near second pick six, and from then on, it was all Tampa. I think the most encouraging thing you see from Tampa is your running game was pretty solid today. Ronald Jones, 113 yards. I need to change my glasses here.
First time they had a rusher in Ronald Jones. That's the first time they've had a rusher go over 100 yards in 3 straight games. And I mean, I think if they said it was like 5-6 years.
He's a physical runner, and that's a guy they were a little frustrated with early on in his career, and he's really blossomed this year with Brady at the helm. But you know who got back into the rotation today? Gronk.
He did, man. He had
5 receptions, big touchdown catch too.
Yeah. He looked like his old self out there.
So let's talk about how critical this game was for Tampa, because if you lose this game, you fall to 3-3, and you're sitting there with Carolina behind the Saints in the division. But more importantly, you're really kind of out of the hunt for a top 2 playoff spot. And you got Seattle and Green Bay, and I think Tampa have really stand out. Chicago's a pretender. I'm calling it until I'm wrong. Okay. I'm calling it till I'm wrong. So I think this is a 3-team race. And really, if you want, I'll throw the Saints in there too. So it's a 4-team race between New Orleans, Tampa, Seattle, and Green Bay for that number 2 spot. And I say number 2 because I really think the Seahawks are kind of the class of the NFC right now. I really like what I've seen from them this season. But you get that win over Green Bay, the head-to-head matchup. Do you think this sets up for Tampa Bay cruising to that number 2 seed?
Well, they're starting to, when we saw their first game against the Saints, we saw some rust, obviously, just from the long off season. Tom Brady was not on the same page with his receivers. You've seen that, progress. They're starting to get on the same page. That defense is playing incredible football right now. Honestly, I'd be more worried about the Packers again because they struggled with keeping Rodgers under pressure. They were getting Rodgers in uncomfortable situations, and that is what just derails that team, is when Rodgers is under pressure. I mean, you saw it 2 times last year against San Francisco when he cannot set his feet and he is rattled per se. He does not play good football. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a great recipe right now because they're playing great defense. They have got their running game going. And Tom Brady, I understand he didn't throw for a lot of yards, but he managed the offense enough to where they put up a big-time impressive win over what's supposed to be one of the best teams in the NFC.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, this just was one of those days where I think too often we're in the media, it's too critical of these guys when they lose. Like Rodgers, like, do you really think Rodgers is throwing for 160 if they play this game 10 times?
No.
Every time. This is probably like a 1 in 10 scenario. So
Right.
this I don't think this makes a big statement about Green Bay, but what I think it really shows to the country is if you're not paying attention to Tampa closely and you're kind of watching them at a distance, you kind of check in on Brady once in a while, what he's doing. This is not a Tom Brady team. Like, Tom Brady is the guy that he's not going to make a ton of mistakes. He's going to put you in good situations and he's going to get the job done. But this is not a big explosive offense. This is a great defense, like head and shoulders above the offense almost. And I think the offense, what was encouraging today is you saw the offense just kind of made steady plays. They weren't fantastic. They weren't off the charts good, but you held the Green Bay offense to just over 200 yards.
Yeah.
Incredible. I think this Tampa Bay defense is what is really going to put them over the top to the Super Bowl. Are there two better linebackers than Levante David and Devin White floating around the NFL?
Not on the same team.
On the same team. That's what I mean. The same lineup. That's phenomenal. That's this Bucks team. I love the defense. And you got Tom Brady. You're not asking Brady to carry the load. He just has to be the guy that gets his side of the bargain done. It's an awesome formula they're rolling with in Tampa, which might have to change its name to Titletown after the Lightning win Stanley Cup and the Razor in the World Series right now. So, big stuff going on, and the Super Bowl's in town.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry, I had to plug the whole old hometown over here in Tampa Bay. Had to give it a plug. But yeah, anyway, Bucks, big time win, big win. Packers still got the edge for that 2 seed with the better record at 4-1, but like what Tampa Bay is doing. All right. I didn't see this coming tonight, but the Rams, they get trounced. It was only 24-16 on the scoreboard, but if you watch the game, it really wasn't that close at all. I think Jimmy G, everyone wrote him off after last week, and he had a nice steady performance tonight, throwing for 2 touchdowns. The Niners kind of looked like the Niners of last year. They kind of bounced back. I wasn't anticipating that from San Francisco. That's been a team I've definitely written off.
Yeah, well, they developed their offensive rhythm in the first half, and that's what got them, 21 points. They only scored 3 points in the second half, but they were running their sweeps. They were getting the ball out quickly. They were letting their playmakers make plays. They've got a lot of guys who are good run after the catch guys, and Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Raheem Mostert can take it to the house anytime. George Kittle, the best tight end in football. A few of those touchdowns were just, they got caught in, their offense allows them to scheme so many openings with all the different motions and just schematics that they do. It's like George Kittle walked in for his touchdown, in the first half. There wasn't a guy within 10 yards of him when he caught that ball. He ran for 20 yards. No one was even around him. That's what they looked like in the first half. They struggled a little bit in the second half, but in all honesty, they were more physical than the Rams were. And these are two teams that pride themselves on being physical, especially on defense. 49ers just had a more physical defense tonight.
So I've been high on the Rams this year because I feel like they've been a nice they've been a bounce back candidate for me. But am I giving them a little too much credit for racking up 4 wins against the NFC East in the early part of the season?
Well, they haven't exactly played the best, but they did put on an impressive showing against the Bills.
Right?
So, there is some credence to that. I think that they struggle, though, when they don't have offensive success right away. Because they're very much a rhythm kind of offense in the same sense that the 49ers are. When the motions aren't working to scheme your things open, they kind of tend to struggle to move the ball once that happens, when they don't set up plays for future success. So when there's no threat of, you running the ball out of this formation, it takes away from the surprise of the tight end leaking out or the quick screen pass off the, play action or something like that. I think they're a team that if they get a rhythm, they can be really tough to stop. But when they struggle out of the gate, they just aren't consistent the rest of the game. They're a team that struggles when they don't start fast.
Well, they get to play the Bears on Monday Night Football next week, so I think this is going to be a big game for the who's the contender, who's the pretender status.
Right. No, for sure.
So we'll look forward to seeing that. Hey, we're not going to break down the games, but just quickly mentioning Kansas City at Buffalo, 5:00 tomorrow. That's a game that was pushed from Thursday night. Looking like it's on Fox or NFL Network at 5 p.m. Kansas City at Buffalo. All right, the original Monday night game, Arizona at Dallas, 8:15 ESPN. So Arizona, Dallas, of course, you got Dak out for the season. Andy Dalton's getting the start there. That's the only big note I have for that one. You got any final thoughts in the NFL, Jeremy?
Well, I'll be very interested to see whether Andy Dalton can help Dallas win the NFC East, because like we've been saying, the NFC East is nothing special this year, but he does have a lot of talent to work with in Dallas. He's got Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, who's probably the best rookie wide receiver in the NFL right now. He has got an opportunity, and then he's got a very strong running back, in my opinion, the best running back in the NFL, Ezekiel Elliott. So, they have the pieces there to win the NFC East. It's just all up to whether he's going to be able to do it or not.
That's going to be interesting to watch, and that's certainly why you bring in a veteran like Andy Dalton to Dallas in case of a situation like this. So I know the Cowboys expect him to do it, but I think we're going to see an ugly race. And at this point, I'm kind of just rooting for a 5-11 division winner. Just let's see it. Why not? Why not?
Well, yeah.
So go Cards tomorrow.
Go Cards.
All right. Let's go to the Did You Know question of the episode, brought to you by Coach Paint. And my question for you, Jeremy, is over or under the number is 4. Okay? Over or under the number is 4. Okay. How many times have the Bengals blown leads of 21 points or more? Keeping this Indiana centric for you, because the Bengals blew a 21-point lead against the Colts today. How many times have the Bengals blown leads of 21 points or more, over or under 4 times? And before you get to that, we're going to cut for break. American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly tell a straight video while increasing retention of information in a short amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today. All right, Jeremy, before we cut for break, I asked you how many times the Bengals had blown leads of 21 points or more in their franchise history. Over or under 4 times?
Oh, man, that is tough. I'm going to have to say over, though, just because the Bengals find ways to do – they just find ways to lose games, and it just wouldn't surprise me at all if they've blown more than 4 21-point wins before.
It hasn't been a pretty history since Boomer Esiason was leading right. Houday to a couple of Super Bowls in the 80s. Hasn't been great. It hasn't been great. So the Bengals, they've blown leads of 21 points or more 5 times, including a team record 24-point lead against the Houston Oilers. So ding, 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 you got that one right. The Houston Oilers 24-point collapse was in 1979, by the way.
1979.
Yeah. So gotta keep it semi. Gotta learn something on these. Gotta learn something on these. Yeah. I originally was just gonna ask you how many times have they done it, but I felt like that was too impossible. So
yeah, that'd have been pretty tough.
Yeah, we want to make it tough. But you're the guest, and I beat you up on the last one. So you yelled at me and told me I tricked you for the folks at home. So he did it off air. Yeah. All right, man. I'm gonna wrap this up here. I'm gonna read us out. So we appreciate you listening to this episode of American Football Stories. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Please subscribe and rate us 5 stars. Follow us on Twitter at American FB Story. And check out our website, AmericanFootballStories.com. My name is Nick Knudsen. My co-host today was Jeremy Coleman, and Robert Parker will be back next week. Thank you.
You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out. Because it matters.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is. The reason I don't think there is because we found bones of dinosaurs and everything else, but we haven't found bones that I've heard of Bigfoot.
I'm very upset. We should have been in the ball game with fast field goal. The coach had sent him in. We shouldn't have sent him in. That's a dang coaching mistake. The kids are playing their tail off, and the coaches are screwing it up.
We just got to stop that little inside trap. You know, the option didn't hurt us much. We played pretty hard. We just got to stop that inside thing. Offensively, we kind of sputtered around, got the ball in the end zone. You know, defensively, we got to get out off the field on that 2-minute drive.
Injuries to your offensive line. What do you do in the second half?
Oh, we're just going to play. We just got to keep playing.
Thank you, Coach.
He has a magnificent personality, I'll tell you.
We receive a lot of mail during the course of the season, and a lot of it's good mail, a lot of it's bad. And one of the
I would say that most of it is good, though, isn't it, Bill?
Yeah, I think so.
I'd say 95 to 98% of the mail we get is always good.
But the one question that keeps coming up where Woody Hayes' name is involved, they say you're a man of no mercy. And yet,
you know, frankly, I don't care much what they think.